Hey, I'm Owen.
Hi, I'm Suzana.
And welcome back to my side of the office, Suzana.
Very comfortable over here.
Thanks. Appreciate it. So I really enjoyed this page. We talked a little bit last time about like silly kind of joke pages.
Yeah.
And these are, again, some of my favorites to make. They're like a nice little resting place before things ramp up very shortly. And I have a good time with them.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely enjoy like getting to go through these little rooms that I wouldn't otherwise get to explore.
Yeah, for sure. Me too. I like to see what you do with them. Especially, we were talking too about how you never planned the waiting room until you needed it. So it's just kind of fun to see not just the waiting room, but like these tiny little this room that Eli goes and has a break at all the time, or the other lawyers who work in his office.
Yeah, just the little area where probably you have like guests that have to wait outside.
Yeah,
Liam.
It's like Liam. It's super fun to me to imagine Eli's workspace. Mm-hmm. He doesn't own the entire firm. He's basically like he's one of several lawyers that work.
Yeah.
He's no particular ranking above them. They just all kind of like work in this wing, and it's kind of fun to me to imagine his work situation and also to see like now the hallway outside of, his office and how, he'd have other like peers and colleagues like in their own offices outside here, and to kind of just see like the little area they'd go trade candy in.
Yeah. This is where we like put them all on the table and we just sit around and trade off what we want.
Yeah. I wanted peanut butter, so if anybody has peanut butter.
Yeah.
This was on sale though, so I got a ton of it. Yeah. It's super cute. I really enjoy stuff like this. And speaking of, I think today we were going to chat a little bit about world building.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to me actually to talk about this because I think that word means two different things to you and I.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think, and also I think it probably means a bunch of different things to other people too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I feel like everyone approaches world building so differently.
Yeah, especially depending on what genre your comic is. Yeah. So we make a slice of life, and so world building is not quite as extensive for specifically toy as it could be for like a fantasy comic or something that if the rules of your universe were different than real world rules, then you would need to like establish like how magic works or like how your societies work and stuff like that. So with slice of life, I think there's a lot of like realism specifically in this story. So there's no necessary need to do a ton of world building when it comes to like explaining that cars exist. Do you know what I mean? Like stuff like that. So so it's not quite as extensive, but like even still within this particular genre that we're working in, this really specific kind of realistic slice of life thing, I think the term world building probably means something different to both you and I. Yeah. Because you're mostly approaching it from not just illustrative, but also like all visual planning. You're doing a lot of like the storyboarding. Yeah. In terms of like I'll do a thumbnail, but you're still laying out what your background looks like. Yeah. And what your scene looks like. Do you know what I mean? So I'm actually really interested to pick your brain about what you approach world building as a mostly visual element in a slice of life world. Yeah. And then maybe I'll talk about how I world build after that too. So.
I would really actually love to hear what you think and prioritize when it comes to writing.
Yeah, for
especially because with world building, like I do think of it so visually that like I want to know what is prioritized by you from your writing perspective.
Yeah. I think I'm really intrigued by this concept. So I want to know, first of all, when you go into world building, let's say like take this page, right? I want to know, like, what is your process when you determine, like, I have this specific scene. I myself have set up a scene for you to illustrate. You could even take, like, when we first saw this office building, if you want, like, a really general, like, this is the first time that we see Eli's office, right? They're in a new part of town. They're in a new setting. So what is your steps? How do you go through building out this part of their world that is the first time we see it?
Right. So the first time that we saw this was only a couple chapters ago. Yeah. So thinking back to that, the first step that we had, because you had written that he needed to go to his dad's office.
Sure.
And it's just like, my first thought was just, I always think of his home office. Because he does have a home office.
He does, and that's predominantly where we've only seen him.
Yeah.
If we see him working, or really, honestly, the only times we even see Eli at all were in that home office over and over again. Yeah, for sure.
He had that kind of authoritarian little thing going on.
Yeah, sure.
But, like, once you remove the dad from the home,
it's
like he kind of has to be in a space where it's like, this is where he spends his days that he's not at home.
Right.
And Liam would see him there more often than not now.
Sure.
Especially as he's not going towards home as much.
Oh, because he doesn't live at home anymore.
Right, exactly. So when I was trying to establish where he was working now, I had to actually talk to you, like, how close would it be to his home?
Sure.
Because I had to think about it from the perspective of, like, I know what part of the city Eli lives in, and I know what part of the city Liam lives in.
Right.
And I even knew what part of the city I needed him to get to be able to have, like, interviews and stuff, because he was talking to his publisher.
That's right. So Liam's childhood home is in a specific part of the city, and then when he moved out with Milo into his flat, he had to go to a slightly different part of the city, and then also it needed to make sense, at least in terms of, like, the world they're in. Yeah. Can Liam, without a car and with only public transport, get to the places he needs to be?
Yeah, exactly.
And also, and it's a little bit, part of it is, it's not 100% necessary that it logistically makes sense. Yeah. That Liam could get to these places, that he can, like, get to work without a car, or that he can, like, get to meet a publisher without a car. But, like, it's fun when part of the places that you do reference do make sense in that way, and it's like, oh cool, it all lines up in a way that makes sense for my world that I want in my head. Yeah. And then also, because it works, then that gives you more reference, because it's like, if you want to make a new part of the city, you know it can be here, and when you look there, then if there are really aesthetic parts that you like to use visually. Okay.
So it actually ends up helping me a lot with establishing a place that seems more real.
Sure.
Because I can fake in elements, and I very often do. I'll add in, like, parts to an area because, I don't know, for some reason I feel like this should be a residential place closer to here. Sure. Even though realistically maybe it's, like, more of actual, like, city buildings.
Right.
But more often than not, I try to follow what the city naturally did, because then it just makes it feel more like a real place.
That's so true. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit too. We'll play, like, a video game that's, like, kind of like a slice of life video game. Yeah. And then it feels frustrating as you play it, and you can't quite put your finger on why does this map feel so frustrating to try to navigate. And it really sometimes is that there's a difference between a city that is built by real people with intended needs than a map sometimes that is built by a game dev who wants it to work for his game, but might not have necessarily thought of the user experience of using it. Yeah. And real cities in real life almost always are built exactly conveniently for the users. Yeah. Unless it's a very old city, but even still, then there's, like, renovations and stuff that get put in. Yeah. If most of your residents complain that it's super difficult to get from point A to point B, eventually the city will put in a project that makes it more easy to get from point A to point B.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because it's like, I don't know if it works the same way everywhere, but I know in a lot of places, like, if there's an issue that you have in your city, you can join, like, a council meeting or something and say, like, this is a huge problem, and other people may agree with you and then also agree, and they'll go and try to put the changes forward with that. Yeah. And that's how most cities are established. Right.
And so when you do that too, like, as you build your cities are living in that way, because the people in them are organic and their needs are organic and shifting and stuff. Yeah. Then the buildings start to become organic and shifting in that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in a lot of cases, like, I would need to put, like, a grocery store close to this area, because it's like, realistically people would have a grocery store in this residential area, unless, like, you're trying to build an area that, like, very clearly is inconvenient, in which case, like, you want to find a place that's going to have that kind of inconvenience.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, you study what made it inconvenient.
That's really interesting.
So, like, if you were to put, like, characters in New York City, or, like, a big New York City thing, you're trying to make a city that was like New York City. Right. You'd have to account for the fact that there are parts of New York City that are extremely inconvenient to live live in.
Sure.
Because, like, they don't have a grocery store available.
Right.
And it's because it's the tourist section or, like,
right.
the section that just costs too much to be able to sell cheap food.
Sure.
Little things like that. And it's like, when you establish little things from real-world situations like that, you can make a place feel more realistic because it's like people can experience that.
That's really interesting. See, those are pieces that I don't know that I ever put together actively in my head. Like, even though, to think of it that way, I did feel that about, like, games that I've played. Like, oh, this map is not laid out in a way that feels like a real city. Yeah. That's kind of interesting, actually.
But you'll notice when you go to play a game that actually has, like, a real-world equivalent.
Yes.
So I'm trying to think, like
Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, Grand Theft Auto. Yeah. They do a really good job of that.
Even though
the Red Dead Redemption.
Sure.
They even plan it and base it on real cities.
Right.
So it's like they know for a fact, like, oh, they would have like this kind of business here and this kind of business next to it. And then it feels more natural to you when you go into that city to know, like, oh, I need to go, like, you go to the saloon or you go to, like, the shopping or next door. Sure. Little things like that. And it feels more, like,
accessible
organic.
And realistic and immersive in that way. Yeah. It makes sense to apply. Obviously, like, with a comic, I mean, I said this a little bit too, but, like, with a comic, it is not 100% necessary.
You know I overthink it.
At least not in the way that, like, it is for a game, because for a game, immersion is almost... baked into its success, with some titles especially.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
But I do see the value in trying to create an immersively realistic world. And I do think that there are definitely benefits. One, I like the aesthetic of being able to be like, oh, I can almost recognize this place. Yeah. Or like, especially if you live nearby, to be like, wait, hold on, I think I might know. Like, that's fun to me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think back to, what was that game that was based in the Boston area?
Oh, Fallout 4, yeah.
Yeah, and like, when you go through there, and it's like, there's that old church that in real life is white. It's painted white, but in the game it's made of brick.
The Old North Church, it's a wooden building. But they just textured everything with brick, and so it was a little weird actually to see. But it is for that game for me was very striking. That it was like, oh, literally I can navigate this city based on my own knowledge of Boston. Yeah, and I don't really need to look at the map. Yeah, for this, and also in knowing. Oh, I need to go to Fenway. Yeah. I know how to get to Fenway from, like, most parts of Boston. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, let me navigate. You know what I mean? That was really cool. That has, like, gameplay implications, but more so it's just, like, a cool aesthetic thing, right? Where it's like, it really didn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter that much, but it just feels better.
It's fun. Brain. It's really fun. And I can definitely see the value in applying that to the comic, too, especially for, like, a slice of life comic, to be able to, like, put in... places and scenes that kind of ring that kind of feeling.
Yeah, like if you could actually go to most of the places that like I even put in the comic.
Sure.
Like, so it's like if someone is from the area, they might recognize something that I threw in for a moment, like a park or like a even bus stop or something.
Especially you were saying with Eli's office building, which is not an office building in real life, but it still looks like the building it was referencing. When you pick buildings that you just like the aesthetic of, where it's like, this might not necessarily be an office building, but if I have to draw a full background, I might as well pick a background that is visually appealing to me. So especially when you're you're specifically selecting for buildings that are very aesthetic and distinctive, that might happen more often too.
Yeah, that's definitely like, it makes it more fun for me too. Yeah. Like if I can just like change it a little bit, I make it a more unique world. Sure. But if I don't change it, if I change it like just slightly, then I can at least keep that realism that you understand like what part of the city it could be.
Sure. That makes sense to me, yeah.
Yeah, because like some parts are going to be older and some parts are going to be newer.
Right, yeah, that totally makes sense. That's kind of cool. I'm really excited for future projects that are based more in towns I've lived in, too. Yeah, most of the stuff that I have in the pipeline is very Massachusetts based. And honestly, I never had any aversion to doing that in the past. But now that there is more of that coming, I'm really excited for that. And then also we have some projects that are based in cities that we really like visiting a lot. Yeah. And that we have a lot of family in the area that I have very fond aesthetic feelings for. Yeah.
Just enjoy them from like a place of nostalgia or even just fondness.
Exactly, yeah. Like you take a lot of trips there and all of a sudden like, you know, 4th or 5th trip you're taking there, you're like, I'd love it here. I would like to make a comic about this place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
it gives you kind of a home feeling.
Yeah, it really does. And so I'm really excited to have more opportunities to like immortalize that feeling in pages. I think toys have been so much fun for the research we get to do, where it feels more like you making a comic in a place that you wish that you could spend more physical time in. Do you know what I mean? And kind of preserving that feeling. But I'm really excited for next step, I guess. Yeah.
I don't know. Go forward.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that's interesting. So when you pick a new area, right? So we're making Eli's office building for the first time, right? Yeah. And you pick out an area that makes sense for the city. Yeah. And then you also have to flesh out the interior.
Yeah. Right? So sometimes when I get to do like a home, what's really fun is that homes will very often have that you can just start looking for homes that are available in the area. Sure. Homes that are for sale. Yeah. And a lot of them put blueprints. And that is amazing.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So if you're ever like world building and you want to establish like a house or apartment or anything like that, just look for what's for rent in the area. Look what's for sale. And sometimes you can find a house that's close to what you want. Sure. And if you find a good what do you call those, like those realty websites? Some of the like more expensive places will have like the full blueprint where you can see the entire layout of the house.
That's true. And then they also have the side-by-side comparison of like not just the blueprint, but also then like a picture of each room. Yeah. So if you need like the 2D, because I have trouble thinking in blueprints. Yeah. But if you need the 2D depiction of it, there's like you can cross-reference like here's the room in the blueprint and then here's a picture of the room that you can orient yourself in. Yeah, that's really cool actually.
And sometimes it gives you more information than you could have gotten from the blueprints because like ceilings aren't accounted for in blueprints.
Oh, that's true.
So like you'll have like even like some blueprints won't account for like chimney spaces and sometimes storage, which is really weird to me and I don't understand it.
Probably if the storage is built post the blueprint drafting, because some closets are put in after.
Yeah, that's true, and that might be very well be the case. Especially in a lot of these like newer constructions, you'll get like better blueprints. Sure. But in old constructions,
they don't account for storage.
Yeah, you're gonna see a lot of things that are just like added or changed.
Interesting.
Especially like because this is based in a very old city, you're gonna have a lot of very old buildings. Sure. And with the very old buildings, you have a lot of like weird things that don't quite make sense anymore. But like, I don't know, for some reason we have a coal storage, but like there's not been coal burned in this place for so many years.
Yeah. That's actually really funny. Yeah. I like that. I remember we did a lot of that with when we went to Nora's house for the first time, which was another kind of weird. Yeah. We hadn't seen Nora outside of, I think, her dance studio. Yeah. Actually. I think she came to the apartment once.
Yeah, she came to the apartment, both of Milo's apartments. Sure. And then you see her at the dance studio.
So that's kind of like a weird situational, oh yeah, she did go to Milo's old apartment. I forgot about that. Yeah. A weird kind of situational, like, you see Nora's life for the first time. Kind of similar to like seeing Eli's life for the first time. Where they go during their day after being slightly estranged from the child who is the main character, right? So you see these things usually from Liam's perspective, or you see them from Milo's perspective, and Milo is slightly estranged from Nora, and Liam is slightly estranged from Eli. Yeah. So you don't see them follow them to these places very often. Yeah. And it's kind of like a weird feeling where it's like you see, for what is that character's day to day, is kind of like, not only is it you as the reader's first time being there, it's probably the character's first time being there in a while too. Yeah.
They have no reason to go there regularly.
Sure. So it's kind of like that. I like that feeling. I like that feeling that it makes. Also, I like then taking the time to find references for like, you put Nora in a part of the city so that you know things about like where she would usually work, where she would need to live, what she would need access to, what her price range is for what she can shop in. And then when you like plug all these things in and then you look for that part of the city and you find blueprints and you find pictures of homes in that area that she would be capable of buying, then you start to get like a visual representation of what kind of person she is. Yeah. Because like, look where she lives, look what her home looks like, and then you can start to learn some stuff about her. Yeah. And I think that's interesting too in its own way.
Yeah, for sure.
We talked about how the background was a character on the previous page. Yeah. Because it was mostly a silent page. so Liam was interacting with the background almost predominantly.
Yeah.
That's kind of how, like, Nora's house was kind of a little bit of a background character.
Yeah.
In that arc, too.
Yeah, it definitely establishes a lot of things about a character to, like, have their entire living situation displayed.
Yeah.
Because you can explore it through work, too. Like, even this kind of office works for displaying what kind of person Eli is.
Sure.
That he does work with, like, a group of people. He doesn't have, like, a unique office separate of it.
No.
Which I think that really shows that he can actually be a little more... He has more socialization.
Right, yeah. He's not... We kind of see him as being very solitary.
Yeah.
But he is very plugged in with other people who just aren't Liam.
Yeah. He
doesn't get along well with Liam, and Liam struggles to relate to him, but that doesn't mean that Eli struggles to relate to other people.
Yeah.
He struggles to relate to Liam.
Yeah.
but he does not necessarily always struggle to relate to other people.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really interesting thing to think about.
Yeah.
For me, you know what I mean? That you did that. Also that it's a very corporate building.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of hominess to it, where we saw his home office does feel more homey, but it is not necessarily his full personage. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot more to him, and it's a very, like, polished, corporate...
Little more austere.
Yeah, it's not, he's not in a single lawyer practice set up in a, reclaimed house or something. You know what I mean? It's very, he's one of quite a few lawyers working together in a very corporate, they're only one floor in a larger building. And I kind of like that. I like what that says about Eli. That's really interesting.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
So now let's find out what's important to you with world building.
Okay, so now I think I've been commenting on it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's usually... So let me think. Let me gather my words, right? I like to start by letting you pick visuals, right? And I know in my head my goals.
Yeah.
The things that I have as goals. I know things about the characters that I'd like to say, and that maybe I need to, like, I balance how much of it I say and how much of it I show, right? And I know that I have plot points that I want to hit.
Yeah.
Right? So I have my personal goals when I start telling the story. I would like to display about this character that he is this way, and this way. And I would like for him to do this thing, and this thing.
Yeah.
I want this conversation to go a certain way and to have this certain end effect, right? But in a lot of cases, I don't think very visually as a person in general. I just don't really.
Yeah.
So I did not have any sort of visual idea about Eli's office.
Yeah.
Or about Nora's house.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of how this city is laid out. I couldn't tell you what Liam's bus route looks like to get from his apartment to his work. Do you know what I mean? I don't visualize those things well, right?
Yeah.
But I know that, there will be times where I want Liam to take a bus. And it's like, I need a transitional scene where he's at the bus stop and XYZ happens.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't know what it needs to look like for those things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I definitely had no visual whatsoever of Eli's office. I have a visual of lawyer offices in general, but I didn't think of anything. So I take the goals that I want for the story. I wanted, kind of a stuffy conversation between them that doesn't go super well. About candy is brought up at one point, and but ultimately you walk away feeling like Eli wants to help with the contract and is excited at the prospect of being able to relate to Liam on some level for once. Do you know what I mean?
Having something to talk about.
Even as he's surprised by it coming up at all. Yeah. Because, you wrote a book? Like, since when do you write? I didn't even... What is this? You know what I mean? But, like, I like to help, so that's cool that I get a chance to help you with something that I know about, because I don't know anything about, I don't know, being gay. You know what I mean? So I knew going into it that's what I wanted from it. So it's interesting for me to thumbnail it, to pace it out, to know how the scene is going to go, and then to let you handle the visuals. Yeah. Because I really like the way that you visually approach it.
Yeah.
And I don't ever feel... I think that's part of the benefit of it being such a collaborative work between us.
Yeah, for sure.
That I don't ever feel like you make choices I really dislike.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Very occasionally, you'll be like, this is what's realistic. Mm-hmm. And I'll say, like, I don't know if that necessarily captures the feeling I wanted. But I think that even in that situation, you're pretty good at then adapting it. And being like, well, here's something else that's realistic, too.
Yeah.
Like, I actually found 3 or 4 different options for things. You know what I mean? And then to be able to, like, say, this is what's realistic. This is what could happen.
Yeah.
Now that I'm looking at the options you presented me, this fits the tone of what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And then to run with it, I feel like when you do that and when I let you take on that job, one, again, you're better at it than I am, and I like what you produce. And then 2, I feel like then that goes fodder back into my writing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because I might have started a plot line knowing I want this part of the story to be about Liam and Eli growing closer toward understanding each other.
Yeah.
But not quite meeting on that.
Yeah.
But I don't know where. Can you just put that in a place?
Yeah.
Can you situate that in a real world place? And then you show me one and I'm like, oh, that is a lot more corporate than I realized it was going to be.
Yeah.
But that really fits.
Yeah.
That fits some part of my understanding of them that I hadn't yet thought about yet.
Yeah.
So now that I have that and that goes into my bank, now I can kind of gear the next part of the story to incorporate that more. Do you know what I mean? And that gives me ideas for like how the next scene that takes place in this area will go.
Yeah.
I felt the same way about Nora's house.
Oh,
where it's like I had no idea what Nora's house was really going to look like. And when I gave you that scene and you fleshed it out and you were like, here's what's realistic, by the way. This neighborhood, this is where it would be.
Yeah.
By the way, it's really far.
Yeah.
And a bus might not be possible. And it's like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about the possibility of there being a place they can't get to.
Yeah.
Easily. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, so a taxi, right, is like the next best place. Okay, well, cool. Like a taxi can then feed into the idea I had for the plot. And that actually will change the story a little bit. And that changes like the conversation that needs to happen a little bit.
Yeah. It puts them one-on-one there with each other versus like in a group situation in like a bus where you can't really talk privately.
Sure.
But even in a taxi, you kind of have that stilted, like, there's someone else
There's
in the car.
There's still a driver in the car, so you have to, like, kind of be on somewhat good behavior. You have to be, like, polite. But, like, it is a slightly different feeling. And so the conversation can go slightly differently. And also, like, there's a different feeling, like, when you're sitting kind of side by side in a car, how that feels kind of different than sitting. You might have, like, a slightly different conversation. And I think for that scene in particular, on the way there, Milo was nervous. Yeah. And on the way back, Liam was nervous. Yeah. And so both scenes have that kind of like, one of them is kind of staring out the window. Yeah. And the other is like, come on, engage with me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm really excited about this, and I have to kind of work myself up to being excited or whatever. Yeah. And how that feels kind of different in a taxi. And so part of you going into world building for that, the way that you approach that fed directly into the way I wrote it. Yeah. Which I think is really interesting. Yeah. So that's what I would say, that's how I relate to the way you world build. Yeah. But in general, world building is definitely the way that I would define it in my head, right? World building is something I sometimes struggle with. Yeah. Because it's hard. You know what I mean?
That's fair.
Even with Slice of Life, I think sometimes it's hard to find the balance between being, like show don't tell. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, I sometimes struggle to find the line between how much of their lives gets conveyed in conversation and how much of it gets conveyed in backgrounds. You know what I mean? And if I were doing both the writing and the illustrating, I would probably struggle with it even more.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because then I wouldn't be able to offload any of it.
Yeah. I actually feel the same way. Like, if I were stuck to world building just by myself, I feel as though I would fall back on a lot of things that right now I can dedicate my time and energy to. Right. So, like, when you give me, like, oh, you need to, like, establish this building, if I didn't have, like, a building to establish, I would create kind of, like, a very vague building. Sure. I kind of feel like I noticed that I fall to that a little bit more when I get to, like in the first parts of Toy, when we were first making a lot of the buildings and stuff.
For the school?
Yeah, around the school. The school I had kind of planned, but a lot of my first rooms in the first 4 chapters were, I didn't have a basis in real world.
Sure.
I didn't have like a classroom that I was referencing. And like looking back on it now, I can kind of see where like, oh, this doesn't look like a real room. I could actually...
You would do it differently.
It.
Yeah.
And a lot of the later things, I did let myself improve them in some ways. But like in other ways... Yeah. But in other ways, I really couldn't do anything. I couldn't just add a window in a room that
had already been established. Before. Oh, yeah. I think I know what you mean, especially with their dorm.
Yeah, their dorm should have had a window.
Their dorm should have been laid out slightly differently anyway. Yeah.
But like at the time, I wasn't thinking about real things, and I look back at it now and I'm just like, ugh, what a plain, boring dorm room.
Sure.
Because Milo's dorm room was a little more interesting because Milo's dorm room
was more built on a real one. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I had a real building and a real room that I based it on.
Sure.
But Liam's and Archie's was already established. It was the first one established.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It ended up kind of bland, and I regret it.
No, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Their first dorm room reminds me a lot of my first dorm room.
Yeah.
In a different school situation though.
Yeah.
But still very similar.
Yeah.
So I liked it still. I liked it for what it was, but I do know what you mean about how if you could do it again, you could definitely have made it something that would have persisted more interesting aesthetically. Yeah.
It could have been more interesting. It could have carried across the idea of a dorm in their city. Because like, it is also very much... Because it was so fictional in my head. Like, it was so not established in an actual place.
Yeah.
It ended up just being, like, a box with 2 beds and, like, a couple furniture.
Sure.
And it's just, like, as I had to keep adding to it, I was like, oh, like, this doesn't make any sense that someone would be living in this space.
Right.
So I tried to flesh it more later. I tried to, like, flesh out the desk and everything. But... as I look back on it now, it's just like Archie doesn't have a desk.
Yeah.
And they only have one like closet to put their clothes in.
Yeah,
but
that's
like
right.
Realistically, if I got a chance to reestablish that room and actually like reestablish it into something more fleshed out, I would have made it a lot more interesting of a room, and I probably wouldn't have put a bathroom in it.
Sure, yeah.
Little things like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Although to be fair, the school that I did eventually find did have bathroom space in there.
Sure.
It's just like the bathroom would have been laid out a lot.
It would have been different, and then it would have had a totally different feeling. Anytime we returned to that room, it would have felt more. There would have been more imprints of Liam and Archie on it, and I think you're right that in retrospect, that would have been really cool to see.
Yeah.
A space like, especially. Now that they don't live together anymore, I feel a little nostalgic for that missed opportunity of like, it would have been cool to see a space that reflected Liam and Archie living together more visually. Yeah. That you could have seen like a little home that they built together. Like that would have been cute to see more of. Maybe for an omnibus. We'll think on it a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, for the first 4 chapters, the unfortunate thing is that I do kind of have to redraw them.
By necessity!
It's just by necessity, and it
Do you want to talk about why?
Oh, because I didn't know what I was doing when we started.
I will say, no, here's the thing is, like, that is the truth for why that room was not laid out well. Yeah. And it's the truth for why... Our files
were also not laid out well. I think they were drawn at 72 DPI.
Okay.
And
I just thought about it.
I should explain that 72 DPI is the size that you should save for the web.
Right.
Whereas
you should not draw.
You should never
at the size that you save for the web.
Yeah, and on top of that, 300 DPI is like the standard for printing. 600 DPI is what you should aim for high quality printing.
Right. So 300 DPI is what you should aim for if you're printing 1-to-1.
Yes.
So if you are drawing on the size that you the piece of paper that's going to come out of your printer with your drawing on it, if that is the same between your file and the paper, then 300 DPI is fine. Right. Yes. They recommend 600 if you intend to print like a bigger, like if you
like a really high quality print in general.
because you can resize it for it'll come out better if it's got enough resolution. So 600 DPI refers to, it's like the pixels per area.
I always think of it as dots per inch.
Dots per inch,
which I don't know if that is true or not, but that's always helped me.
I think that's that's how I think of it too. Where it's like it specifically contains more data, so that if you do print at a bigger size, you won't get fuzziness.
Yeah.
Whereas if you print you might have noticed if you print a picture off the web, it'll come out either super tiny on your piece of paper, or it'll come out when you do try to print it bigger. It won't have those dots per inch in between each pixel, so it'll have to like guess what they are. And when it guesses, it's just like blurry. You know
it comes out with like weird blurry colors and kind of strange shapes. So I mean, the benefit of when we printed the volume 1, the benefit of it was that at least the pages were smaller.
Sure.
So it having been drawn at that size, it didn't come out so bad, but it could have been so much better.
Sure.
And I look at them now and it's like, well, at least they didn't get it completely ruined in print.
Sure.
I got lucky because we were doing it in the
you
blue.
did get lucky.
Yeah.
We got really lucky. Yeah.
Only because we were doing it in blue.
Yes, because it doesn't have color also to have to contend with. Yeah.
If it had color all over it, it would have made such a difference and would have been very bad in printing.
Yeah, for sure.
So once I got into chapters 5 and 6, the 5 and 6 ones had color, full color. And I was drawing at 300 DPI.
Oh, that's when you switched?
Yes.
You switched specifically at chapter 5?
Yes, because I learned after chapter 4, when we printed the first book, I need to be drawing at a higher DPI because now we're printing books.
Right, that makes sense.
I hadn't thought of it before.
You know, Toy has been, from its inception, such a trial and error learning situation. Do you know what I mean? When we started making comics, we had no idea what we were doing. Like, literally no concept or clue about what we were doing. I think baseline, it was like, I kind of want it to be vaguely this size. If we ever printed it, this would be the size I would want it to come out.
Yeah.
And then we kind of did some math to try to get to that point. But we didn't do the math right.
Yeah, I kind of winged it for a lot of things, and that's not good.
Well, here's the thing, right? It's not good now.
Yeah.
In retrospect, it's not good now. But I feel like at the time,
it worked.
It was fantastic because it felt like everything we did taught us.
Yeah.
And I felt like there was no pressure.
Yeah.
There was no pressure to, like, make a good page.
Yeah.
It was just to make a page.
Yeah. And I definitely, like, in looking back on it, just, like, having just have to make a page. Like, I'm just gonna make it. I don't really, like, care about the, like, extra thoughts to it.
Sure.
I mean, it gave me kind of a bland room, but it gave me, like, the fun of just focusing on making, like, have a fun little character thing.
And it got us through the first, 100 pages.
Yeah.
It carried us through the first 4 chapters of Toy. And, like, those 4 chapters, if they hadn't existed at the quality that they do, we wouldn't have had chapter 5 exist at all.
Yeah.
And, you know, every page you make contributes to the next page being able to be existent. Right.
Yeah. I think that's one of those things when people say, like, if you want to make something, just start it. And you're going to learn along the way.
Oh, for sure.
And it's like, you're going to make mistakes. Like, obviously, everyone does. Yeah. Even if you're very well established, you will still make mistakes.
We constantly still make mistakes.
Yeah.
Constantly.
And you're just going to keep learning, and eventually it's going to get better. Like, you might as well start it and do it wrong, and then just learn how to do it better.
But at least do it.
Yeah. At least you've done it, and now you can just keep going forward. And there's always an opportunity that, like, at some point in the future, like, once you've gotten established and you can keep going with it, you can always, like, go back and, like, fix things like that. Yeah. But it's not necessary.
It's not necessary. I think it would not be necessary for us to do it now.
Yeah.
But there definitely will come a time where I will find this is a really valuable time to redo them. I think it'll be a really interesting approach to it. I think it'll be a chance to add some stuff. So there should be, like, new things for old readers to go back and expand out and enjoy.
Yeah. A little more world building, a little more relationship building, even
treating your backgrounds as a character. Yeah. That, you know, that works with your atmosphere and kind of adds in exposition. And I think as you do it, you'll have a chance to add things that would have done well there had you known. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think it'll be a fun practice. I don't need to do it today. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I'm definitely more interested in finishing chapter 19 and then finishing chapter 20.
Yeah, just keep going forward.
Yeah.
It's not worth stopping and going back now.
Not yet, but soon. You know what I mean?
Once Toy is finished, things like that can be considered a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And I think like at that point I'll have some even better ideas that I don't even have yet. Yeah. Some ideas for things I wouldn't have even thought of.
Yeah, that is really true. I think about that a lot. I think about that with like Death of Caleb Perkins.
Oh yeah.
About how so we started it a couple years ago. Yeah. And then did not have time to continue it past its prologue. Yeah. And I'm sad about it. I really want to work on it again. Yeah. And I'd like to, before the year's over, really in earnest pick it back up. You know, really work on its website and relaunch it. But when we started it, I felt very strongly that the place we started it was perfect, even compared to a year before. Yeah. That was my feeling going into starting it. Like, wow, that we can make this. We would not have been able to make this a year before. Yeah. You know what I mean? We, even in the last year, we had learned so much about comics that it directly contributed to us being able to make something of that quality. Yeah. Right? And then we had to shelf it. Yeah. So we did. And we put it on pause for like, I think it's been about 2 years, maybe 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think 2 years. I would say 2018.
Okay. So, now, as I'm now have the ability to go back in and begin scripting and begin thumbnailing the next part, it's occurring to me the level we're at now. And I'm not even saying like, wow, we're so good. I'm not saying like that. The sum and total of all the things we've learned and all the pages we've made in the past and all the things we've learned how to do with Clip. Yeah. Or the things we've learned how to do with Photoshop. Yeah. Or the things we've learned how to do with paneling. Or like in your mind about the way that you lay out a room. Or your perspective tools. Or your world building tools. Everything we've learned in the last like 2 or 3 years. The next page of Death of Caleb Perkins is going to be so much better. Yeah. And now I'm like, thank God we're starting it now.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? And I think it would always feel that way. Yeah. If we started next year, it would be like, wow, thank God we're starting it now instead of last year. Because that's just what it is.
Yeah, because you're always going to learn.
So just start. Because it will always feel like that. You know what I mean? And you might as well learn alongside it. Yeah. You might as well, page 10 of chapter 1 of Death of Caleb Perkins might be significantly better than page 1, but at least you got there. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, going into Toy, like, I had the original idea of, like, back in 2011, I was a little self-conscious putting my art out there. I was like, I actually don't think that I'm good enough to even, like, actually draw this
I think everyone feels that.
Yeah, and I think even, like, we hummed and hawed on it, and really, like we said, I think the last video, or 2 videos before, we had 2 other pages that never... Like, they established something else. Right. Because they established the end of the story.
I think it's so funny. Those 2 pages were such a bad start for both of us.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't like the art in them, and I didn't like the direction of the story. Yeah. It was such a strange way to begin.
But it was part of learning.
Sure, yeah.
And, like, in doing that, I realized, like, this is not how I should be paneling. Sure. I think those first 2 pages, and what makes them very weird, was I sketched them on paper as each individual panel, kind of loosely, with pencil. Sure. And then I scanned it, and then I inked it on the computer, and then I sized it down to the panels. But I was also inking on open canvas.
So I will say, briefly, I've seen artists put that to use for their entire comic to huge success. And it's very well suited to them.
Yeah, that's how I even got that idea.
Sure. It just wasn't best for our flow.
Yeah. I realized really quickly my brain does not work like this. Right. When I'm sizing panels like this, I'm not thinking of the characters appropriately. I'm not sizing them appropriately. And my paneling was kind of weird.
Sizing them, now, what do you mean? Based on the background? Like they're not fitting into the background correctly? Or
no, I wasn't making the panel the right size at all. Because in the pencils, I was like, because it was just like one piece of paper, I drew a panel. Sure. And it was like kind of small.
Do you still have those?
Oh, maybe in storage. I would have to really dig for them.
I want to go on a treasure hunt. That's funny, actually.
We're going to have to see where they are, because even beyond those 2 pages, there's one time in, I think, 2012 or 2013. I think it was 2013. We did a hourly comic day.
Oh my god, I totally...
Do you remember that? Or
yes!
It was 24
It was a 24-hour comic.
So we made a 24-hour comic of Milo and Liam
playing an MMO.
Playing an MMO with Kat and Penny.
With just Penny.
Oh, no, it was just Penny.
Yeah.
Right? So, Kat was featured, but...
Kat was in it, but I think she was, like, in the background. Yeah.
So, we actually had them playing an MMO for, I think it was 20 pages?
Well, I think it's 24 pages. 24 you make 24 pages in 24 hours.
You're right.
We did not finish. I think we finished 8 pages.
We finished the sketches on all 24 pages.
That's correct.
So all 24 pages have sketches and words written on them.
Yes.
And then I inked 8 of them. I
still love that comic.
It was really funny. I actually really regret that I never finished it because I kept meaning to go back to it because it was hand inked and hand sketched.
Yes, I remember that.
I don't know why we did that. We decided to just do it.
I think we thought it would be faster.
Yeah.
It was not. It was not.
The second I got to inking, no.
Turns out it's faster to do the thing you're used to.
Yeah.
than to take on a totally different medium that you don't have as much practice with.
Yeah.
It just turns out that that's the way it works.
Weird.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
So
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, I would love to find them and scan them.
I would love to retackle that for another 24-hour comic day.
Yeah, it could be fun.
I still like the premise.
Yeah, it was funny. I think it would even be funnier now to
I'd clean it up. Yeah, I would clean it up and maybe like add more jokes.
Yeah,
but I really liked what was there.
Yeah, it was funny.
We're really gonna have to deep dive because now I'm very motivated to find that. Wow.
I have a feeling where it is, but it's not in a place where I could get to right now.
Okay,
and that's such a shame.
All right, I might have to enlist some help.
Yeah, so we'll have to think on that. Last time I looked at them, when I was thumbing through them, a few of the pages got a little damaged on the edges.
Okay.
Some of them, the pencils had smudged. So we'd have to do a little
Well, we'd probably start over anyway.
Yeah, we'd have to recomb it. But I would like to scan them just to have the original preserved.
I would love that.
It was very goofy. And
yeah, maybe throw it on the Patreon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love... It was so goofy. That's the kind of humor that's some of my favorite humor, so...
Oh, we worked so hard. We stayed up for 24 hours. And we still couldn't finish.
I know.
Like we tried very hard. We had cooked like the day before and like
we prepped all our meals. Yep.
We really like worked hard, and we got to the end of it, and it was just we were so exhausted.
I don't think it wasn't hour 24 that we gave up. I think we gave up an hour 20, and we were like, I don't think we can do this.
I think we actually got further. I'm pretty sure we got to like 26 or 27, and we were like, we really cannot finish this.
I remember feeling defeated because we had another 3 hours left to work on it, and we were like, I don't think we can do it.
Yeah,
I just don't think it's gonna work. Yeah.
I feel as though I tried to even like revisit it.
I felt very defeated. I know we did try to go back the next day and to kind of be like, well, maybe just to finish it because so much work went into it.
But then we also had our day jobs, and we also had to go back and keep working on Toy, so we had to abandon it.
Oh God, that makes me so sad to think about. I'm gonna do a deep dive.
Yeah.
I'd really like to. Next, I'm gonna have to see. I totally forget when 24-hour comic day is. I would
think
love
it's
to.
October.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, perfect. Mm-hmm. I would love to retackle that. I would love. I know, you're looking at me like, why?
Oh no,
a little panic. But I would really like to try because I think we know so much about working faster now that we didn't know then.
Yeah. I mean, I have 12 other pages right now in the works directly. Is it 12? It might be 13.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so we have another comic that we're working on that's 5 pages, and then we have another comic working on that's 8 pages.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to get through them also alongside Toy.
Oh, Suzana, I know.
So as soon as I can get through them...
Hey, how's your hand health, by the way?
Pretty good. It got a little stiff. You can hear it snapping a lot because I keep having to like stretch it.
Sure.
I'm trying to take the time to stretch it today, and I'll probably soak in some Epsom salt. But
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's doing pretty well.
Good.
It's just
give me a rating.
Ooh. Out of 10 being good.
Yeah.
I'd say like a 7.
That's not bad.
It's not bad.
7 is what it seems to be like on your days off.
Yeah.
7 is your max that you get to.
Yeah, probably.
Oh. All right.
Okay. I think like even on like the longest times that I take from drawing, I find other habits that are equally bad.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's like driving
or like playing a game, playing a video game. Yeah.
Playing a video game that requires me to like do the dexterity and WASD. Yeah. Oh, I'll really ruin my hands on WASD sometimes.
Sure.
Or even, like, for some reason I decide to take up something that, like, small details.
Oh, yep, yeah, sure.
So, I have bad habits, and I just keep adding more of them.
I know it. You like projects that, like, require very dexterity based, and then also, like, very tense. Like, you have to hold something really hard.
What's wrong with me that I like that so much?
No, it's just all your favorite pastimes. That's a shame. All right, well, that's okay. 7's not bad. Yeah. I know we have a lot on the back burner, so I'm always very hesitant to suggest things like the 24-hour comic thing.
But I also would not mind that, because it does sound fun.
I'll definitely think about maybe clearing the docket a little bit, and maybe even, like, if we could get a head-on toy, a little bit more of a buffer, and to give you maybe, like, 3 or 4 pages where you don't draw.
Yeah.
Or if you do draw, you do very loose sketches just to stay warmed up, but not to do really precise detail work.
Yeah.
And really rest your hand up for, like, a maximum amount of time, and then jump into a 24-hour comic day. That, to me, would feel really cool.
Yeah, that could be fun. Especially since no one's doing the inks a day thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I don't want to say the word.
Yeah.
It's a dirty word now.
The every day of October do one inked drawing.
Yeah. It might be fun to put some thought into 24-hour.
I think so too. I really enjoy the challenge of it.
Yeah.
I really like art challenges in general. I think because I'm such the person who doesn't do well with sustained longevity. That's more your skill set. Do you know what I mean? That I get very fired up and excited by
little projects.
Today you get to take a whole day to conquer this. And if you're bored, you don't have to do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's not, you don't have to do it twice. You know what I mean? You get a whole nother year before you have to worry about it again. Yeah. Whatever. It's fine. So I really do like short burst projects like that. They're super fun to me. So.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll think about that a little bit more.
Get some ideas in the works.
Yeah.
Those are honestly some of my favorite comics to buy at cons too.
That's so me too.
When someone has a 24-hour comic,
I love buying those too.
I'm always so tempted by them. I have so many like little ones here and there that I've just bought over the years, and it's just like they're just so fun because I don't know. I like seeing what people do under duress.
I do too. People make the coolest stuff under duress.
They do.
Truly. I think I personally like most of what I make under duress better than what I make when I have time. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Which is why I think I live my whole life in intentional duress. I put myself into intentional duress in order to make things that I like most.
You know, I think we're actually saying something more about the American school system at this moment.
Oh, you're probably right, actually.
Dear.
I'm probably actually speaking to
a huge problem.
Something that has been curated in me over many years that I've always preferred the way I work under duress, and then therefore in my professional adult life, where I've all the time in the world to curate my own schedule and must create situations that intentionally put me under. But you know what? At the end of the day, I just like it.
Yeah.
I like the stress.
And I like what comes out of it, so what can you do?
What can you do? All right, so I'm going to clear our docket. I'm genuinely going to clear the docket, and I'm going to think about that really sincerely. Yeah. So thank you, Suzana, for coming over my desk today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No
it was
problem.
Really nice over here.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'm still planning on marrying you.
Oh, good.
Because you asked me a couple of episodes ago.
Really glad.
Do we have to figure that out? Time travel.
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
I'll work on that. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And thank you also if you got to this point. You listened to this.
It was a lot of fun.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you a lot.
See you later.
Have a good one.